The Galactic Coalition was a place of rules, order, and careful planning. Every species in the galaxy had its strengths. Some were strong, some were fast, some were smart, but every species had one rule that everyone believed. No species could ever use two weapons at the same time. The idea seemed simple, but it had been studied for thousands of years. Every test, every experiment, every warrior had failed. It was written in the history books, taught in schools, and repeated in training halls across countless planets. The rule was more than tradition, it was law. In the center of the coalition, in a great hall that stretched like the sky itself, the representatives of different worlds gathered. Tall beings with glowing skin, creatures with many arms, creatures with scales and wings, they all came together in one place. They moved with grace and power, each showing the natural limits of their species. And today a human would stand among them. Commander Elias Vance walked into the hall quietly. He was not tall or muscular compared to some of the other species, and his skin was soft and ordinary. He wore a simple uniform, the badge of the human delegation pinned carefully over his chest. Around him, the other representatives whispered. Some smiled politely. Some shook their heads. Humans were new to the coalition and no one knew much about them. Most thought they were clever but weak. Certainly, no human could ever attempt dual wielding. The instructors, a council of the most experienced warriors in the galaxy, began their demonstration. Every species has its strengths, said a tall, silver-skinned alien with 4 arms. But every species also has limits. For thousands of cycles, we have studied the maximum capacity of the nervous system, the muscle coordination, and the reaction speed. We have tested all forms of combat. And yet, no species can hold and use 2 weapons at once with skill. It is impossible. The human species is no exception. Elias listened quietly. He had heard this before in different words. Humans had always been underestimated, and today was no different. But he did not feel fear or anger. He felt curiosity. The human mind was different. Humans were not born with the fastest reflexes or the strongest muscles, but they had something else. Adaptability. They could try, fail, learn, and try again. That ability had allowed humans to survive on a planet where storms tore the land apart, where predators hunted in numbers, and where nothing was predictable. The council motioned for the humans to step forward. Elias walked to the center of the hall, feeling the eyes of dozens of species upon him. Some leaned forward with interest. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Commander Vance, the council said, you are aware of the rules. Dual wielding is impossible. We do not allow it because no species can achieve it. This is a demonstration arena, not a battlefield. You will attempt no more than 1 weapon in your hand. Do you understand? I understand, Elias replied simply. His voice was calm, almost casual. But I would like to show you something. The council murmured among themselves. They did not object, though their expressions were skeptical. One instructor, a creature with scales like polished stone, leaned forward. Very well, human. Show us. But do not waste our time. Elias nodded and stepped back. The arena was large but simple, a flat surface with holographic targets floating in the air. He could feel the tension of every species around him. Many had already predicted his failure. The idea of a human holding 2 weapons at once was absurd. Their minds could not imagine it. He picked up a single training sword first, just as the instructors expected. He moved smoothly, striking the holographic targets one by one. He was not the fastest or the strongest, but his movements were confident, precise, and natural. The audience nodded politely. It was good but not extraordinary. Then he picked up the second sword. A silence fell over the hall. No one had expected it. The council's instruction had said no human could do this. It was impossible. And yet, here he was, holding a weapon in each hand. The fingers of his right hand and left hand moved independently, yet in perfect harmony. His stance was balanced, his eyes focused. The 2 swords cut through the air, hitting targets on opposite sides, moving in different directions without hesitation. Gasps and whispers spread through the hall. Some aliens stepped back. Some covered their mouths. The instructors watched carefully, analyzing every detail. It was not just skill. It was strategy, control, and instinct working together. Every movement Elias made was deliberate but flexible, as if he were dancing with 2 minds at once. One of the council members, an elder with crystalline wings, leaned forward. Impossible, he whispered. It should not be possible. Elias smiled faintly, not arrogantly but with calm confidence. He continued, moving both swords in fluid patterns, testing balance and coordination. Every motion proved the same truth: humans were different. Humans could learn chaos and make it ordered. Humans could take limits and find a way around them. And maybe, just maybe, they could do the impossible. As the demonstration ended, Elias lowered the swords. The hall was silent for a moment, as if the universe itself had paused to watch. Then, slowly, a ripple of astonishment spread through the crowd. The humans had not only challenged the rule, they had rewritten it, even without saying a word. No species could dual-wield, they had always said. And yet, here was a human, calm and composed, holding two swords as if it were the simplest thing in the world. The murmurs in the hall did not die down for hours. Even after the demonstration ended, the aliens could not stop talking about the human who had held two swords at once. Scientists, warriors, and council members gathered in small groups, trying to understand what they had just seen. For thousands of cycles, the rule had been clear: dual-wielding was impossible. And yet, the human had done it without apparent effort. Commander Elias Vance returned to the human delegation quietly. He was not shouting or showing off, he simply walked back with calm steps. The young human officers around him stared in awe. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "He did it. Two swords, at once." Elias smiled softly but said nothing. He already knew what the aliens did not. It was not about the swords. It was about the mind behind them. Humans were not built for perfection in a single task. They were built for chaos, adaptation, and survival. On Earth, humans had learned to handle danger with whatever was at hand. They had learned to improvise, to fail, and to try again until something worked. That same instinct allowed a human to control two weapons at once, not because it was easy, but because they had no fear of the impossible. The coalition scientists were fascinated. A delegation of biologists and neuroengineers approached Elias carefully. Their skin shimmered with nervous energy, their multiple limbs gesturing in confusion. "Commander Vance," one said, her voice soft but firm, "we have studied humans for some time. We know you are different from most species in terms of flexibility and endurance. But this, dual-wielding, it defies our understanding. How can your brain control two independent limbs in combat? Neural mapping suggests it should be impossible." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "You're looking at it wrong," he said. "It's not about control or limits. It's about learning, adapting, and reacting. One limb does not control the other, they work together when the mind allows it. Humans are used to solving problems in real time. That's why we can do this. It's not magic. It's practice and instinct combined." The alien scientists took notes rapidly. They whispered to each other, their eyes wide with amazement. None of their instruments had predicted this outcome. Every data set they had suggested that a human brain could not process two independent combat motions simultaneously. And yet here it was. The human mind had not broken. It had expanded to meet the challenge. Outside the hall, the other species watched with disbelief. The tall silver-skinned instructors shook their heads. "Perhaps we underestimated them," one said. "No species has ever adapted like this before." A small creature with 4 arms leaned forward, curiosity burning in its eyes. "It's not only coordination," it said quietly. "There is something in the way he moves, the way he thinks. It is unpredictable." That unpredictability was exactly what Elias had relied upon. Humans had survived countless catastrophes on their home world not because they were the strongest, fastest, or most intelligent, but because they could think differently. They could find a solution where none existed. They could bend rules that seemed absolute. That flexibility had given them tools, strategies, and tactics no other species had considered. Later, in the quiet of the human delegation's chamber, Elias sat down with a few of his fellow officers. "Do you realize what we've done today?" one of them asked, her voice trembling slightly. "They said it was impossible. And you just did it." Elias looked out the window at the stars beyond. "They haven't seen anything yet," he said. "Dual-wielding is only one example. Humans are capable of more than they think. Every species follows rules because they believe limits are physical. For humans, limits are often just suggestions. We learn, adapt, and push beyond what others accept." His officers exchanged glances. They had trained for years, mastering every kind of weapon and tool. But even they had not fully understood the depth of human adaptability until this moment. Elias' calm confidence had shown them that the mind could overcome obstacles that the body alone could not. Back in the coalition hall, the council reconvened to discuss the event. A crystalline-winged elder stood before the assembly. "It appears we were wrong," he admitted, his voice echoing across the chamber. "The human has demonstrated what no other species could. Dual-wielding is not biologically impossible for all species. It is possible for humans. We must reconsider our teachings and strategies." Some younger instructors gasped. To admit that humans could do the impossible was almost unthinkable. For centuries the galaxy had celebrated limits. Limits defined species, battles, and histories. And yet, here was a human quietly breaking a rule that had never been broken before. Elias did not care about fame or recognition. For him, it was never about being the fastest or the strongest. It was about showing that humans could adapt, survive, and succeed in ways others could not imagine. The swords were merely tools. The lesson was far greater. Humans had a mind that could challenge rules, bend limitations, and turn impossibility into opportunity. That night, as the stars glittered over the coalition capital, whispers of the human who dual-wielded filled the halls. Some species were skeptical, some inspired, and some fearful of what humanity could do next. But one thing was certain: humans were no longer just another species. They were different. And the galaxy had only just begun to understand what that meant. The morning of the demonstration arrived, and the atmosphere in the coalition hall was electric. Word had spread quickly. The human, Commander Elias Vance, had already shown that he could hold two swords at once. Some species were excited, some were skeptical, and some were openly anxious. No one had seen anything like it before. Elias stood in the center of the arena. The floor beneath him was polished and smooth, and holographic targets floated at varying heights and distances. The arena was empty of danger, but the tension was palpable. The council members, scientists, and instructors gathered around, watching carefully, their eyes flicking back and forth between him and the targets. "You may proceed," said the crystalline-winged elder, his voice calm but firm. "Demonstrate your abilities. Show us what your species can do." Elias nodded and picked up a single training sword first. The weapon was light in his hand, balanced and smooth. He moved it in sweeping arcs, striking each floating target with precision. He was steady, deliberate, and controlled. The audience murmured politely. They expected skill from any warrior, but nothing extraordinary. It was the human's next move that would draw all eyes. He reached for the second sword. A silence fell over the hall. No one had predicted this, and some leaned back instinctively. Many species had already written off humans as limited, fragile, or uncoordinated. But now, a human was holding two swords. The fingers of his right and left hands gripped the hilts independently, each prepared to act alone yet together. He did not rush. He did not strike recklessly. Instead, he moved the sword slowly at first, testing the balance, letting each arm adjust. Then, with the softest nod, he began to attack the targets. One sword moved to the left, slicing through floating shapes with careful timing. The other moved to the right, striking targets that were not in the same rhythm. The movements were synchronized yet independent, as if two different minds guided the weapons. Gasps echoed across the hall. Some observers' mouths fell open. One alien, with scales like liquid silver, whispered, How is this possible?" It was not magic. It was not luck. Elias' arms moved with intention, guided by human instincts honed over centuries of adaptation. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or most precise species in the galaxy. But they had a unique ability: their minds could organize chaos. They could think in layers, handle multiple challenges at once, and adapt instantly to changes. That ability allowed a human to coordinate two swords independently. He increased the tempo, striking the targets faster, moving one sword upward while the other swept downward. His feet shifted smoothly to maintain balance, his eyes constantly scanning the environment. The audience watched in amazement. Holographic sensors recorded the movement, showing data streams that even the scientists could not fully explain. Neural activity, motor control, and reflex responses worked together in perfect harmony. A council instructor stepped forward, curiosity burning in his four glowing eyes. "It is impossible," he muttered to his companion. "The calculations, the tests, they cannot account for this level of coordination." Elias did not hear them. He was focused on the task, the targets, and the rhythm of his movements. Each strike had a purpose, each motion a pattern. It was more than combat, it was a demonstration of human adaptability. Even when the targets moved unpredictably, he adjusted instantly, the swords responding faster than thought. The hall was completely silent except for the hum of the holographic devices and the subtle swish of the blades cutting through the air. Aliens leaned forward, trying to understand. Some took notes. Some simply stared, realizing they were witnessing something never seen before in the galaxy. Humans had broken an unbreakable rule, not through brute strength but through flexibility, intelligence, and instinct. Finally, Elias slowed, striking the last target and holding both swords in a calm, controlled stance. His breathing was steady. His eyes were clear and focused. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one by one whispers began spreading throughout the hall. He did it, no species could ever, humans? The crystalline-winged elder finally stepped forward, his expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. Commander Vance, he said slowly, you have done what no other species has ever done. Dual-wielding is not only possible for humans, it seems to be natural. Elias lowered the swords. He smiled faintly, not proud, not boastful, just calm. It is not about strength, he said. It is not about being faster or stronger than anyone else. It is about adapting, learning, and responding. Humans survive because we find a way when no one else does. This is just one example. The hall erupted in murmurs and discussion. Scientists immediately began analyzing the data, noting anomalies in reflex patterns, neural activity, and coordination. Instructors began rethinking strategies, questioning everything they had taught for generations. Some observers were inspired. Others were nervous, realizing that humans were not ordinary participants. They were unpredictable, adaptive, and capable of challenging long-held rules. Elias returned to the edge of the arena, still holding his calm posture. He did not bow or celebrate. Humans rarely needed recognition for what they could do. The act itself was enough. What mattered was that the impossible had been shown to be possible, and the galaxy would have to rethink its assumptions about humans. As he walked away, whispers followed him through the hall. No species can dual-wield, but humans can. The words repeated like a mantra, echoing in the minds of every alien who had witnessed the demonstration. And Elias knew this was only the beginning. Humans were different. They adapted, they learned, and they could do what others could not. Two swords were only the start. The galaxy had never faced a species like them before. And now, everyone was starting to realize it. See. The day after the demonstration, the halls of the Galactic Coalition were filled with whispers. Aliens from dozens of worlds moved in small groups, talking quietly but urgently. Every species that had watched Elias Vance hold two swords at once could not stop thinking about it. Some were amazed. Some were confused. Some were worried. The human had not just broken a rule, he had challenged centuries of understanding. Council members held meetings in quiet chambers. They reviewed the data from the demonstration, analyzing holographic recordings of Elias' movements. Every sensor, every neural scan, every motion-tracking device confirmed the impossible. The human mind and body had moved in perfect harmony with two weapons at once. The algorithms of every species' combat specialists failed to predict or explain it. It is unlike anything we have seen, said a crystalline-winged elder, his voice thoughtful. No species could ever maintain control of two independent weapons. And yet, the human did. Another council member, a tall silver-skinned warrior with 4 arms, nodded slowly. It is not only skill, he said. It is thought, strategy, adaptability. His mind does not follow a single pattern. He changes as the situation changes. He learns in real time. Outside the council chambers, Elias returned to his delegation quarters. He did not boast or celebrate. To him this was natural. Humans had always adapted to impossible challenges on Earth. They had survived storms, predators, disease, and scarcity by finding solutions no other species could imagine. Dual-wielding was just another problem to solve. His officers gathered around him, eyes wide with admiration. "Commander," one said, "they're saying it's impossible for anyone else to do what you did. The council, the scientists, everyone is talking about you." Elias shook his head gently. "It's not me," he said. "It's humans. It's the way we think, the way we adapt. We don't just follow rules. We look for solutions. If something seems impossible, it doesn't stop us. We try, we fail, we adjust, and we try again. That's why we survived on Earth, and that's why I could do what I did today." One of the younger human officers frowned. "But they're calling it unique. They're saying no one else could ever do it. Does that mean humans are special?" Elias smiled, a faint, calm smile. "Yes, in a way we are. Not because we are stronger or faster, but because we are flexible. Our limits are different. Other species see obstacles as walls. Humans see them as puzzles. And sometimes we solve puzzles that no one else even tries." Across the coalition, the news spread quickly. Training academies and research labs analyzed the recordings repeatedly. Scientists tried to recreate the movements with other species. They tested coordination, reflexes, and motor control, but no one could match the human. Aliens began to realize that this was not a matter of strength, speed, or instinct. Humans had a unique way of thinking. Their minds were designed to adapt, to improvise, to take risks others could not. In a lecture hall on a distant planet, Instructors explained the event to young cadets. "Observe carefully," said a silver-skinned instructor. "The human did not cheat physics. The human did not have special muscles. The human used something we do not fully understand. Adaptability. Humans can adjust to chaos in ways that other species cannot. Watch the recordings. Learn what you can. Perhaps one day, you may understand how humans turn limits into opportunities." Meanwhile, some observers worried. If humans could do the impossible with two swords, what else could they do? Could they invent new strategies? Could they survive extreme conditions no other species could? Could they challenge centuries of rules in other fields of science, exploration, and diplomacy? The thought made some leaders uneasy. Humanity was no longer predictable. It was a wild variable in the galaxy's equation. Elias walked quietly through the corridors of the Coalition base. He noticed aliens staring at him, some with respect, some with fear, some with pure curiosity. He understood their reaction. Humans had always seemed ordinary at first glance. Average strength, average height, average lifespan. But underneath that ordinary exterior was a mind that could bend limits, rewrite rules, and adapt to almost anything. He remembered Earth, where humans had survived disasters, wars, and diseases because they could innovate, improvise, and work together. That same instinct had allowed him to hold two swords at once. That same instinct would guide humans as they explored the galaxy. Later that evening, the council reconvened. "We must reconsider our doctrines," said the crystalline winged elder. "We taught for centuries that dual-wielding is impossible. We tested every species. And yet, humans prove that limits are not universal. Perhaps we have misunderstood what defines strength." A younger instructor raised a tentacle. "It is more than strength," she said. "It is thinking differently. Humans do not see rules as limits. They see them as challenges. Their ability to adapt may surpass any species we know." Elias overheard this from a nearby chamber. He did not smile or comment. Let them talk. Let them realize slowly that humans were not just another species. The galaxy would take time to understand it, but eventually everyone would. Humans could adapt, survive, and succeed where others could not. Two swords were only a symbol. The real power was in the human mind itself. By the next day, whispers had become discussions, discussions had become debates, and debates were turning into admiration. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were recognized as unique, unpredictable, and capable of achieving what no other species could. Elias knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned a lesson. Limits exist only where one believes them to exist. Humans had already learned to live beyond them. And somewhere, in the quiet of his mind, Elias prepared for the next challenge. The swords had been a start. The galaxy had yet to see the full extent of human adaptability, and when it did, no one would ever think of limits in the same way again. The galaxy had begun to change its perception of humans. Across star systems, in council chambers, training halls, and research laboratories, beings of all kinds talked about what they had witnessed. The human who had held two swords at once was no longer a curiosity, he was a symbol. Elias Vance had done something no species had ever done, and the galaxy was slowly realizing that humans were different in ways they could barely understand. Elias returned to the arena for a final review of the demonstration. The hall was empty now, but holographic targets floated silently, still recording every angle and movement. He picked up the two swords once more, not to demonstrate but to reflect. The weight in his hands was familiar, and the rhythm of his movements felt natural. Humans did not rely solely on rules or limits. They relied on adaptation, on practice, and on the ability to turn challenges into opportunities. That was why the act of dual-wielding, impossible to all others, seemed effortless to him. Outside the hall, discussions were taking shape. Coalition leaders debated the implications. Some were excited, seeing new strategies and possibilities. Others were concerned, realizing that humans could disrupt the established order of combat, tactics, and training. The crystalline-winged elder, the one who had first spoken, stood in the council chamber with a grave expression. "We believed that limits were universal," he said. "We tested every species, studied every possibility. And yet, humans have shown that what we considered absolute is not absolute at all. Perhaps our understanding of strength, skill, and adaptability has been incomplete. Humanity may teach us lessons we cannot yet imagine." In training academies across the galaxy, instructors began to review every detail of Elias' movements. Students studied the recordings, analyzing how the human mind could coordinate two independent actions at once. They realized that it was not only physical skill, it was intelligence, adaptation, and instinct combined. No other species had approached this level of flexibility. Humans did not just react, they anticipated, adjusted, and improved in real time. Elias, however, paid little attention to these discussions. He walked quietly through the corridors of the Coalition base, observing the reactions around him. Some aliens stared with respect, some with curiosity, and some with cautious fear. They were beginning to understand a truth humans had known for a long time. Strength was not only about power or speed. Strength was about adaptability, resilience, and creativity. Humans had these in abundance. In the following weeks, the phrase that had once seemed like a warning, "No species can dual-wield," became a story. It was told to young cadets, written in textbooks and recorded in archives. But it was no longer a statement of impossibility. Instead, it became a lesson in human ingenuity. Teachers would point to the human demonstration and say, "Limits are not always real. Sometimes they are only beliefs waiting to be challenged." Other species began to reconsider their own approaches. Soldiers practiced ambidextrous drills, scientists experimented with cognitive coordination, and engineers explored new ways to expand limits. The galaxy was learning that humans could inspire change simply by existing differently. The ripple effect of one human demonstration had begun to reshape thinking across countless worlds. Back in the human delegation quarters, Elias reflected quietly. Two swords in hand, he felt the same calm focus as before. Humans were not extraordinary in the ways aliens imagined. They were not inherently faster, stronger, or smarter. Their power lay in perspective, the ability to see possibilities where others saw obstacles. And now the galaxy had begun to see it too. One of his officers asked, "Commander, what will we do next? If everyone knows we can adapt like this, won't they expect more?" Elias smiled, a small, calm smile. "Let them watch," he said. "Adaptation is not about meeting expectations. It's about solving problems. Today it was swords. Tomorrow, who knows? Humans survive because we find ways that others do not. That is our advantage. That is our gift." News of human capabilities spread beyond military and council halls. Explorers spoke of their ingenuity in navigation and survival. Scientists marveled at their creativity in solving complex problems. Diplomats found that humans approached negotiations with flexibility and strategy. Every corner of the galaxy began to recognize something simple but profound. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of what others believed impossible. Finally, the day came when the Council formally recorded the demonstration as a historic event. The Elder spoke, his wings shimmering in the hall's light. For centuries, the phrase, "No species can dual-wield," was considered a truth. Today, a human has shown it to be false. Let this be remembered not as an anomaly but as a lesson. Limits exist only where belief allows them. Humanity has reminded us that rules can be challenged, boundaries can be crossed, and the impossible can be achieved. Elias lowered the swords one final time. The act had been completed, the lesson delivered. He did not need applause or recognition. What mattered was that the galaxy had learned something important. Humans were different not because of raw strength but because of adaptability and perspective. As he looked out at the stars, the endless stretch of galaxies beyond the Coalition's walls, he knew this was only the beginning. Two swords had been just the start. The human mind, capable of adaptation and innovation, would continue to surprise the galaxy. Limits would be challenged, rules rewritten, and possibilities explored. And whenever someone doubted humanity's capabilities, one phrase would echo through the corridors of history. No species can dual-wield, until a human grabs two swords and says, "Watch this." And with that, the galaxy understood something new about humans. They did not simply exist within limits, they transcended them.